I give the floor to our President, Ivan Stefanitz, for the introduction and summary of our SME Impact Assessment 2. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Horst, and good morning, everybody. So nice to see all the familiar faces. I'm feeling privileged to present the result of SME Impact Assessment 2, because it is actually the second survey we have already done in last year. At the beginning of pandemic, we decided to make first survey, and now after 1 year we repeated that. So this survey was realized in first quarter 2021. There are two lessons I'd like to highlight at the beginning. First one is that the more sector is affected, the more likely SMEs and self-employed people are to respond to the survey, which is quite interesting, but it means that people still, they are interested how to get help, they are interested how to respond to this survey. Second lesson is that SMEs that operate across borders are much more likely to pursue EU economic measures. Of course, we know that this pandemic we can overcome only by common European approach, and we can help much more SMEs who operate on the common European market. Most SMEs were affected, and we were surprised by this survey that almost 75% of SMEs were affected. It's a really huge number. It means that really most SMEs have difficulties. 56% of them will not survive more than 6 months. It means that situation is really very, very serious. SMEs need help. They use also on reserve, they used bank credit, but most of them, they used state aid as the help. Without state aid, they wouldn't survive really. As we expected, we moved to digital world. Most SMEs moved to teleworking and home office. They say 44.2% of them, they use much more teleworking and home offices. Of course, current difficult situation was reflected in temporary reduced employment and also in employee layoffs. 25% of SMEs used employee layoffs, and 29% they used temporary reduced employment. So situation was really reflected in lower number of employed by SMEs. Many SMEs, they also started to diversify sales channels like online marketing, e-commerce, delivery options, and also many of them try to diversify products to satisfy new demands. Maybe good news is that they moved to digital world. They feel that digitalization and e-commerce, it is the new opportunity for them, and they really take it very, very seriously. If we ask them which government intervention would be the most helpful as they cope with COVID, 2/3 of them, exactly 64%, they say tax waivers or temporary tax breaks. Due to financial difficulties, they really ask for some tax reliefs. And what was also a very important point, it was, I would say, not enough simplicity how to get information about the help. If we ask them how easy is to access information and benefit from COVID-related SMEs assistance programs, 62% of SMEs said that it was very difficult, or it was very difficult to get this information. So to summarize that, firstly, SMEs, they need quick access to finance, either in the form of government grants or bank loans. And even if we decide on the European level, member states, they play key roles in transferring this help to the SMEs. Secondly, SMEs, they need a delay in taxes to give them much needed breathing space, and a reform to tax policy to encourage new investments and new jobs. And thirdly, last but not least, they need a reduction of bureaucratic burden on companies, particularly in accessing funding. I do believe we should not also forget on pushing this situation to be normal. I know that it is very much connected with vaccination. Of course, it can still take a couple of months, but for most SMEs, it is the question of survival. And also in the long term, we also need to complete single market and make EU funds work for the future via massive and decisive investment in infrastructure, digital change, education, and research, just in order to help SMEs to survive and to benefit after we overcome this challenging situation. So that's it, basically the major messages from these results. Thank you very much. Back to you, Horst.
Thank you, Ivan Stefanitz, for this brief overview. I think the numbers and the results reflecting the situation very well. But I think it's also important to see that it's not only the situation we can analyze through this impact assessment. We know also what we have to do or what we have to change, or we get the hints of this, what SMEs needs. And you mentioned financial aid was one of the main factors to stabilize the situation, but it's also the main tool or one of the main tools for recovery. And we're coming now to our Honorable President Ingo Friedrich from Franconia, Germany. And what lessons we can learn now out of this crisis, what we have to do, what are the chances and dangers at the moment, and how we can restart and give the SMEs a push with state help, but perhaps also with private help. Please, the floor is yours, Ingo.
Dear friends, hello, good morning, and thank you for the invitation. Yeah, Horst, I see especially 7 headlines concerning financial aids. First, and Stefan said it in the tendency, SME need easier and faster information about the financial aids of the states. In the survey, the big majority does not feel well enough informed. The way to get the aids is for many of them too complex, especially the small firms don't have an expert and have somebody to ask. And the longer the crisis lasts, the more important is a sufficient, good, exact information. Second, 2, SMEs need transparent criteria to qualify for support. The states try to avoid abuses. Okay, that's understandable. But for SMEs, the rules are too complicated. They need it easier and transparent. Otherwise, they are afraid to make mistakes or the papers are not fulfilled in the correct way. And there's an old rule, not only for politics, has a very nice name, could be an Austrian name. The name is KISS principle, meaning keep the things easy and simple. KISS, keep it easy and simple. 3, we have to think about to avoid a banking crisis. It has to be taken into account that a lot of SME, not nice to think about, in spite of all helps, will go bankrupt. So their credits at the banks will not be paid back. This means the danger threatens that banks will run into greater problems. And the states must have plans to avoid this, to save those banks which get and will come into trouble due to this negative development. The Corona crisis shall not end in a banking crisis. That would be a very dangerous situation for all of us. 4, the SME, the small business, need debt relief plans. A lot of our friends of SME after the crisis will have much higher debts than ever before. And they are not used to handle such high debts. We have 0% interest. This is a very big help in this situation. So they need additional expertise, how to handle and overcome such a new difficulty. Once more, banks and tax consultants, but also other experts are asked to give knowledge and help. This could lead to less cases of bankrupt in the SME sector. 5, the states shall support new investments. The huge amount of fresh money Europe and the states plan to push into the economy shall primarily go into modernization, into new ideas, new products. This should be the aim to change economy, to develop economy in direction of future challenges. We know the challenges of the futures. This could be climate, could be environment, could be digitalization, and so on. And once more, a good principle for this situation, to try to turn a problem into an opportunity. This is exactly what we shall aim in this situation. It's not easy, but it is possible, and it could help a lot. 6, in the current situation, it should be forbidden to raise new taxes. Thus, just the opposite is right. Okay, the states perhaps need new money, but it's wrong. Taxes should be reduced. The deficits have to be paid back, but not at once. And it is easier for the states to get money from a growing economy and not by new taxation. And an additional idea, especially for SME, it shall be introduced a new, very, very important instrument. The possibility of loss carryback, in German, Verlustrücktrag. That means the enterprise will get back the taxes of the last profit year if there's a loss in the current year. And even you can make it for 2, 3, or 4 years. So you get back correct money of the state you paid, and the financial authorities could see it exactly, so no possibility for betrug or something like this. So this instrument of loss carryback should be taken in all states of Europe. 7 and last. SME need good plans to restart the whole economy. The corona crisis got a grip on nearly the whole economy. And accordingly, the whole economy has to be restarted. The best help for SME is a booming economy. Therefore, to boost all parts of the economy is the best help for recovering of our friends, the small business of Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ingo, for this inspiring presentation. I think you mentioned all points we have to bring on the table in the member states and the European level. And I think this is really, you say also where we can help and where are also the difficulties, like the bank crisis, that we're not creating new crises in the crisis, and that it's often better to set free the SMEs with taxation, to give them space to breathe, and also that it's not only about saving them now, also to make them fit for the future. And for this we need money, but not only money is needed, also freedom. We're coming to our Honorable President Paul Rübig. We heard also bureaucracy is also affecting financial aid, also the help of the governments in the European Union. What we have to do, please, the floor is yours.
Yes, first of all, thank you so much, our President Ivan Stefanec, to make it possible to send this message to the public. because in the crisis we see that the public administration is dominating everything. So we are in front of a monopoly in the health area. It's very difficult for SMEs to support this crisis. If you see all the debate on masks and vaccination, everything is handled in a very, very bureaucratic way. And so the whole system is suffering from a very inefficient governmental system. And that's all over Europe. We are quite happy that European Union organized the buying situation so that there were negotiations on the price and on the timing done in a coordinated manner. And it was at least a public procurement. And we all know that public procurement is the base for competition, and only competition gives for the consumer the best solution. So competition is also possible between member states. It's possible between administrations. It's possible between international global players, and it's especially possible between SMEs. So if we as politicians want to work for SMEs, and I'm now also member of the European Social and Economic Committee, and I'm in the board of the entrepreneurs, if we want to make a good deal, we should do it for our consumers, because they have the right to choose which kind of vaccination, which kind of mask, of course with certain standards, but a free market, a global free market would be the best, and that's the reason why we need trade agreements, why we need the recovery of the WTO, and that we should look to better regulation. Better regulation is key, because if you see the agenda of the European Union in legislation, and that the European Parliament has more than 20 committees, and Georgios Kyrtos, he knows exactly how much work is done in the Parliament in all these committees. And all these committees are very specialized and go very much into the detail. And for me as a former blacksmith, it was always a big problem to understand all these complicated legislations. And if I asked our specialists, some of them also couldn't explain what the sentence means. So how could an SME, where the daily business in the bakery is to get up in the morning at 3 o'clock to fire the oven and to sell the bread, how should be an expert on all these tons of legislation? Thousands of legislations are done. And also in big companies, it's getting more and more complicated, that in some construction companies, the law department is larger than the people who are working outside to build houses. So that's the development where we should be very careful. We should cut red tape. I think we should also ask the institutions like the European Economic and Social Committee only to come up with a cutting of legislation. So, and it should have impact onto the European legislation agenda, that if the Committee of the Region or the Committee of Economic and Social issues, if they say it's not acceptable, if one of these committees gives a veto, then it should be not, or it should be a special procedure how to handle this. So like if the Commission comes up with new legislation, maybe these two institutions can come up with ideas which legislations could be simplified or making it better understanding. We know that digitalization and the European digital single market is still not there where we are. Michael Boni, you still can remember on our fight against the high roaming charges. It's still not over. you still can't buy a SIM card from Austria in Sweden or in Finland. It's still a very regulated market, and we know through the change of attitudes, we now need also these roaming agreements within free trade agreements. I think a fair use clause would be necessary on a cost base, that communication is affordable. I think it's very important for the global trade that communication now exclusively done by video streams and using electronic devices. We should use that this is affordable, and that a real competition, a global competition in this field could come up. That would be, especially for SMEs, very helpful, because high roaming charges are very burdensome, and it's very difficult to keep in competition. So the education will play a key role in this area. So how can we set up a better vocational training units? How can we increase the skills of our people, especially in the public administration? I think in the public administration, it's necessary to look to best practice. Europe can show a lot of best practice in the public administration, but we would need a heavy push in the vocational training and in the public procurement to get forward. So private-public partnership is something which should be in the middle of the debate, because with very high qualified administration, which we have in a lot of countries and ministries, and on the other side with a lot of people, especially young people, who want to be successful, who want to create wealth, I think this should be joined, because some people in politics think that money comes out of the box where you push in your card, and that leads to poverty for all. And I really don't like this. Everybody should be higher taxed, and the one who are doing and producing the wealth, they have a negative image. And I think it should be also very interesting to show that if people are well educated, that also the social economy will grow. And that's, I think, a cultural point which is quite important. So I think outsourcing would be also something where we could see that in the value chain, in the global value chain, from raw material to manufacturing to ICT, all these areas are working together, producing better efficiency and at least better results for the consumer. I think the politician sometimes look too less on the effects on consumers. I think consumers are the core of a market economy. And some of the left and Greens think that the market is bad. It would mean that consumers are bad because they don't buy what they want to introduce to them. No, it's exactly the opposite. I think we should look where is the demand from the consumers, and pull and demand driven economy is in the benefit of everybody. And the truth is that everybody is a taxpayer. So from the smallest child to the oldest people, all of them have to pay tax. So if somebody wants to raise tax, everybody will be treated in the wrong way. So also let's be fair to see the competition on tax would be very important. And that only works if we make it again attractive to be an entrepreneur, to take the risk, to take the skills, to take the chance to doing it better for the society. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, very much. You summarized it in a very good way. I think the point is some are calling for more state help, more government's interventions. But in fact, the key for the relief after these lockdowns, after the COVID-19 crisis, are our entrepreneurs who are creating jobs. and sustainable jobs. And I think this is also a very good idea from you, that you should measure the European institutions, not only what they are creating for regulation, what they cut for regulation. So that should be not only be to be proud, we had this new regulation. No, we put down this 10, 20 regulations in the last quarter. I think this is really, I think, a good approach, and can be also a competition, and in a good way, who has more ideas to cut burdens. And I think also with the public-private partnership, this is a very important key. I think we're coming now to digitalization. What is now a key tool to survive this crisis? It's also the key for the future. And Michael Boni, we have for everything deadlines, measures, what we want to reach to save the climate. We have no ideas when we should transform completely our SMEs. And I think our governments are not working too less together with the private partners. But we want to listen now to your ideas about the digitalization, because this shows our survey was one of the key tools to transform. And we welcome now also Pernille Weiss, member of the European Parliament, our board member. Thank you that you could manage it between your committees to join us. She was also the initiator of these surveys. The first survey was her idea. I think thank you very much that you give us this input. And I have also to say that the Danish entrepreneurs are very active on these surveys. And now we're coming back to Michael Boni and the digitalization. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you very much for the idea to prepare and to have this survey, because it's very useful to know how things are going on in relation to SMEs during the Corona crisis. Of course, we know that digitalization became one of the key elements of keeping the business, keeping enterprises in activity. And due to this survey, it's clear how important is teleworking, was teleworking, and is teleworking. And I think that we need to discuss also about the legal framework for teleworking for the future, because probably the teleworking, the remote work will be continued after the crisis when we consider that this is effective and it can create the work-life balance for workers, but on the other hand, it can create much more productive and effective work of workers during some parts of the week. So as I know, in many countries, teleworking has some bureaucratic burdens. There are many requirements related to the work done at home, so it should be changed. Also, I think it was a time, and it is the time during coronavirus, when diversifying sales channels is clear and visible. There are many solutions for online marketing. E-commerce is developing, and also the new relations between SMEs and those companies, also small companies, organizing deliveries of some products. So we have two completely new measures and activities, teleworking and diversifying sales channels, and it should be continued. But what is needed for the future to keep it, to develop it, and on the other hand, to take this opportunity and to create this advantage related to digitalization of small, medium enterprises, because this is a big opportunity for their economic development in the future, for scaling up, for creating new relations with consumers and so on. Firstly, it is the infrastructure development. As Paul mentioned, it's a question of roaming and prices.
But on the other hand, this is a question of accessibility of high quality networks. And this is a big differentiation in many European countries between urban areas and rural areas. And we have many small, medium enterprises in rural areas. So I think, and in small cities. So I think it's very important when we will invest in the future in the new solutions in 5G infrastructure, it should be also focused on equal access for all business companies to the infrastructure. Secondly, it's a question of guidance and advices for small, medium companies how to digitize their companies. And I think this is a duty addressed to the state, to some institutions led by states and also financed by public money. And on the other hand, this is a possibility to create some new consultancy groups, but with clear access for SMEs, because I think it will be very important in the perspective of 2-3 years to use new measures supporting digitalization of small, medium enterprises. Thirdly, access to financial sources for digitalization and investing in the companies. It's crucial. It was visible during 2020 how many small companies had many problems with finding some financial sources to finance their new possibilities and to support them in achieving new goals. Fourthly, I think it's also very important, this is digital literacy, because on the one hand, we need to discuss about the remote education, how COVID has changed everything, but on the other hand, going in the direction of digital small, medium companies, we need to develop digital literacy and skills which should be above essential, above basic digital skills. So we need to open some kind of educational programs and training for entrepreneurs. I think it's crucial because as it was mentioned by Paul, there is a problem with the understanding of the legislation. There is many new solutions, legislative solutions in the area of digital, and I think it should be clear for entrepreneurs how to implement those new solutions. We are discussing now about Digital Services Act. So it will be also not so easy to some companies. So digital literacy is crucial. Fifthly, I think that we need to consider how important for development of digital small, medium enterprises will be stronger access to data, to open data. Many public institutions have many data. They are structured. They can be used for creating the new businesses and creating new opportunities for consumers. So I think this is also the way to support small, medium enterprises. And of course, it is important to have a clear legislation and understandable. I think that we need to discussing in the European Union now about data governance, about artificial intelligence, about new digital services. We need to consider not only how to prepare the legislation, but how to promote some solutions. And on the other hand, we need to have some kind of impact assessment of this legislation on SMEs. We have discussed about it during our discussion in SME Europe on Digital Services Act, but I think it's very, very important to promote understanding of the legislation among entrepreneurs and go forward. And the last point, which is I think very important, it's creating the understanding This is also for public authorities, I think, and European institutions, that digitalization of small, medium enterprises in the European Union is the opportunity for scaling up these businesses and also giving them completely new opportunities. There are new modes of services. There are new possibilities to keep contact with consumers. So I think this is the opportunity. So during the time of coronavirus, during the time of many threats, serious threats for small, medium enterprises, there are some opportunities, and digital area is one of these key opportunity, and we need to support understanding what is going on, to make legislation much more clear, to create financial background and sources for supporting the digitalization of small, medium enterprises, to give them advice and create guidelines, and of course, to ensure that high quality infrastructure will be accessible. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much that you bring this whole picture of this important topic. I think there's a lot to do, but in this crisis, really a chance also to make to close the gaps we have now in digitalization compared to Asia, compared to United States. That it's really like a wake-up call, perhaps in the right moment, that we can see that this crisis shows us where we are lacking, where we are weak, and digitalization is something we can be strong in our SMEs, but we have also to create the environment for it. And I think this is really a good and very important thing, that we are now doing something out of this crisis and not coming then to the usual business after we survive this pandemic financially and also healthy. Pernille Weiss, we had before, if I can also, you are now dropped in, but we heard about financial aid, how key this was to solve the crisis, how to boost the investments. We heard how we have to fight bureaucracy to value entrepreneurship. We had now at the last point, digitalization. You are fighting also for this transformation, of the green transformation in this crisis, that we have also a chance to promote our SMEs if they are looking for new services, new products, new markets, that in this green transformation, where you are also in your political work, you are very active in promoting also that we should take over the leadership as the Europeans. How we can handle this in this crisis, out this crisis, to make this transformation as a success story, not only as a burden for our SMEs. Please, the floor is yours. I hope it's not too rough to bring you into this discussion.
No, thank you. It's all right, Horst. I mean, all of us who are here this morning, we have our thoughts almost 24/7 on these topics. So it's very welcome, and thank you for giving me the floor and this intriguing question, because yes, it should be possible to combine both the part of the Next Generation EU fund that is pointed with the 37% to climate projects, as well as also the 20% that are targeted for digital transformation. That we combine those two and actually get more than only 37 plus 20% of effect. And just speaking from the gut, I think what could be helpful is that if we prioritize to help our SMEs who are, and many SMEs are somehow related with the climate. And everybody have a production system that runs on energy of a kind. So if we can use the digital transformation and the upskilling, of both competences and architecture of the SMEs, to give a more clear picture of the energy consumption and the forward-going transformation of the production sites and the process design of the SME. Because energy efficiency, not only in the building stock, which is one of my dear topics of my heart, but also the energy efficiency in every kind of SME or in every kind of product coming from an SME has relevance to the green transition, and is also where the data collected in a clever way can be a part of the way that we communicate to each other, and also to be co-creative in the union, in between sectors, in between countries, but also how we, in a more broader trade aspect, is strengthening the SME's competitiveness on the global market. So that is where I hope to see many ideas coming up, both in the national plans for the next generation recovery funds spendings, but also maybe a question back to this panel and who are with us this morning. What would you like for SME Europe to do to boost all the sparks to the great fire of both the competitiveness, but also the recovery of so many SMEs? So that is my take on that one. And if I may be allowed also to just to have a small reflection to what Michael Boni just said on digital, and in the beginning on how to create this innovative, how could you say it, energy in the way of how to use the digital tools in a very innovative way without the fear or the slowness that comes from. Let me just be very frank to you. I was frightened a couple of weeks ago by the debate on the right to disconnect opinion in the plenary, where all the gifts that comes from being remote, from being digital, to be flexible and innovative, that they were met by so much socialistic law-making discourse that would drown the innovative entrepreneurship and all the urgentness that we really need for our SMEs to have in buckets for the next coming months and years. And also there, I mean, we as SME environment, we really need to step up and help our SMEs to not be afraid of introducing new digital tools in the way that their SMEs are doing their work and how they are developing their business models. Because it is that kind of agility and flexibility into the future that we need in order to make EU still to be on track to be the best performing continent in the world. I mean, so we must not also put an extra burden to the SMEs by making it a problem that digital tools can actually help us to have both a better work-life balance, but also that it is a part of what every SME themselves make agreements on the local basis with their employees. That is the best of all worlds, that you can make the agreements with your staff, with your people around you, to have them on board of this both green and digital transformation of your business to be a more robust business model, that you are not being drowned with legislation coming from Brussels, so to speak, because a lot of local agreements can be done, a lot of local shared ownership to how do we use our time efficiently together, also in a way where we can be whole people, whole families along the way. Because we need our optimism to have the best foundation for the next coming years ahead. That is for sure. And I don't think that we as EU legislators are the best ones to dictate how SMEs around in Europe should organize themselves. We should give, as also Michael Boni said, frameworks and guidance, and also be the kind of a cross-pollinator in between sectors so that you can learn from peers and you can be inspired in the good way of a healthy competition in the single market. So that's actually my take and a long answer to your very short, intriguing question, whether the climate is also a part of what we need to do, and that is for sure. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Pernille Weiss. It is really a very strong political message. I think this makes also a difference to other political groups. This optimism, this spirit, and to want not only to survive, we want still to be the best in the global competition. This is a different approach. And I think what you say also, we cannot answer the question of the 21st century with answers from the 19th centuries, like the socialists. I think the best example is Brussels to forbid smartphones in taxis and to order taxis. I think this is the symbol of this, how the answer should not be. And I think also that you say that it is also a chance to be more efficient in production with green technology, that we are becoming stronger. But we have also, of course, to empower these SMEs to go in this competition, to participate on the internal market, participate on the global markets. And I think this is a strong message, and it shows the difference. And also the questions what SME Europe can do for you, because I think SME Europe is unique in Brussels. It's the only political business organization who is existing. We are also service providers for our SMEs, not only legislation and answers, we're providing also services. We try to help. We cannot give all answers, but we know always the stakeholders who knows the answers. So to a message to our SMEs, come to us, to our board members also. We can help, we try to help. Pernille, please.
Yeah, that's a very important message. I would only like to applaud that one also with a little example, because I know the data in the SME Europe survey is there are a lot of Danish data, because where I come from, we have been digitalized for quite a while. So that is obvious. But that doesn't mean that Denmark is ahead of all in every aspect. And let me give you an example, because I also made an inquiry in the EPP group on how is each member state colleague, how do they hear their SMEs on the question, are you confident? Do you have trust? Do you experience a high speed of communication with authorities on the state aid packages? And I had heard in the beginning that some of the Danish companies, they very much experienced that their papers were on a long and slowly journey, and that EU and the Commission was blamed for being the slow one on the dance floor. But actually that survey showed that it was the Danish authorities that were slow. And when I got data in from the other EU countries, from my colleagues in EPP, I saw that this delicate and very valuable needle in the haystack, that actually the Belgian SMEs, they almost did not experience any kind of slow processes around their applications for state aid, because the model of how to distribute the state aid money was decentralized to local authorities that know the exact specific sector, and also where the SME, and it's from the taxi driver to the medium-sized enterprise with the plus 200 and above employees. What they share together is, we like not to waste our time by reiterating what we have already sent in with a lot of forms, but also what we have said again and again and again every time we took the phone and called an agency or an authority. And actually the Belgium model was very inspiring for me to go back to my country and say, hey dudes, we are not the best in the EU. We can actually learn from others, and please look to Belgium, because they have done something that is on the principles of decentralization, which is also a part of the key subsidiarity, that it's not only a matter of the balancing between Brussels and the national states, but also in the national states with the SMEs. So that was a strong message also coming from that side.
Thank you very much. I think this is linked directly back to Paul Rübig, who says competition between local administration, regional and member states. It's exactly what he also said as an example, what you mentioned. So it's a common thinking at SME Europe. And now we're coming to the key issue also from our survey, because one message was also clear: the lockdown, how long it takes, how we can plan for the future, that we need common standards, that uncertainty is really a huge problem for SMEs, especially for the tourism sector, for business traveling. I think some countries are suffering more than others, but it's clear we need a plan, a strategy to come out, and we need also clear steps that also the investment is possible, that the entrepreneurs can plan, also employ again people. Georgios Christos, what is your message here? Because you wrote also a book, you analyzed it very, very clearly already 2020, in the end of 2020. What is here your demands and message, please?
Yes, thank you very much. I think we had very interesting presentations, but I have to ask you to relax a little bit, because your problems are nothing compared to the problems of the Greek economy. I have to tell you that the Greek GDP went down by 20% during the previous crisis, and we were at the time organizing an economic restart with developing rates of 2 to 3% per year. And suddenly we lost another 8.2% of GDP during the year 2020. And we keep falling during the first trimester. And I don't really know what's going to happen during the summer, because, you know, in Greece, we depend a lot on tourism and services. We have too many small and medium enterprises, and more very small family enterprises, and they are all in trouble. I did write a book. It was published last October in Greek, unfortunately. The title of the book was "In the Labyrinth of the Pandemic." Labyrinth and pandemic are Greek words. So I analyzed what's going, it's a 400 pages book. I analyzed what was going on in the European Union and the United States, and compared it to what was going on in China, New Zealand, Australia, and the main issue is that the pandemic accelerates the shift of the world economy towards the East. This shift is a characteristic of the last 10, 15 years, but now it has been accelerated despite the fact that the pandemic started in China, and we thought that at the beginning that it would be some kind of Chinese Chernobyl. It could even create problems for the Communist Party and the regime. And finally, the Chinese were very successful in combating the pandemic. And that's why their economy developed at the rate of 2% during 2020. And they're about to develop at a rate of 6 to 6.5% during the year 2021. In the European Union, the successful countries like Germany, for instance, they will reach the year 2022 in order to go back to the level of economic activity of the year 2019. But the countries with structural problems like Greece, they'll have to wait until at least until 2023 to go back to the level of activity they had in 2019. So this creates a lot of problems. I believe that if we could unify our approach, unification of lockdown standards and measures, we could make our European life less difficult. But I really, because we need a unified market and we need fair competition, a level playing field. We know what we need, but I don't think we are going to get it. Of course, this doesn't stop us from striving for it. And I have to tell you as a politician that the European approach is not always popular. See, for example, what happened with German Christian Democrats, because they had the European approach as far as the vaccines were concerned. Instead of Germany going it alone with other powerful, economic powerful countries and leaving behind Greece and other countries, I think it was a correct decision that we should go and get the vaccines all together at the European level. But this decision wasn't very popular in Germany and in other countries that have more economic means and can exert more influence than the less powerful European member states. We are entering a period where we have to strengthen global cooperation. I think we should strive for it at the European level, but also at the level of the OECD. Of course, what happened at the OECD is characteristic of European unification, where you know, the OECD has 37 member countries, 25 out of the 37 are EU member countries, and that's why you get an Australian was elected, despite the fact that there were strong European candidacies. For instance, the number 2 was Cecilia Malmström from Sweden, and the number 3 was Anna Diamantopoulou from Greece, both of them former European commissioners. But finally, the Matthias Cormann was elected Australia's ex-finance minister. At least he was born and raised in Belgium. And of course, the OECD, the headquarters of the OECD are in Paris. Anyway, we are entering a period of globalization because of the rise of China and because of the reaction of the United States of America to the rise of China. So the OECD is very important for us because we need a new tax policy in a globalized world. And we also need to find a solution about taxing giant digital companies so that the burden for SMEs can be reduced. These are complicated issues, of course, but and the interest of the Americans towards the East, it keeps increasing. we have the new kind of cooperation, the quadrilateral security dialogue between the United States of America, India, Japan, and Australia. So we need a unified European response in order to increase our specific weight within the OECD, where solutions will be found on certain economic issues. As far as planning some form of economic security, we have to create the economic and financial prerequisites for a steady recovery. We need, especially in countries like Greece, an accommodative fiscal policy. I think we have it, more or less. We need to organize a second chance for viable SMEs and entrepreneurs that have fallen victims of the pandemic. Usually, what we mean in Greece as a second chance is a second chance to pay your debts. But I don't think this is what it is required. What we need is a second chance for a new business beginning, which is much more complicated. And of course, we need to keep interest rates low, which is the rule, thanks to the ECB. But at the same time, we have to promote the convergence of the interest rates, because if you compare the interest rates for SMEs in Greece, they are twice or three times the interest rates of SMEs, not of Germany or Denmark, but of Portugal or Spain. So there are huge problems as far as competition is concerned and the cost of doing business. We have to develop an opening strategy with high health standards. We push forward in Greece the so-called digital green certificate or passport. I have made certain proposals to the European Commission. We believe that we can use blockchain technology to store and certify COVID-19 tests, vaccinations, and the patients that have recovered from COVID-19. These are very useful tools in my view. I hope they will be adopted at the European level. Von der Leyen wants to push it forward. I hope the governments will collaborate. But of course, this is not the solution, because we feel a lot of economic pressure, especially SMEs. So we have the tendency to hurry up. But, you know, moving fast is not a good way to solve the pandemic, to respond to the pandemic. For instance, during the last tourist period, we opened up the tourist period in Greece when we had, let's say, 30, 40, 50 new cases per day. And of course, by opening up the tourist sector, the number of cases started rising from one after several weeks. But now in Greece, we have 2,000 or 3,000 cases per day. So despite the fact that the government, the SMEs, everybody wants to open the tourist sector around the 15th of May, I think this is practically impossible. First, you have to reduce the number of new cases and to also have 50 deaths per day, which is too much. And then you have to apply certain procedures like the digital green certificate or passport to control the situation. But first you have to control the pandemic, otherwise you cannot develop the economy. This is my basic point that I make in Greece. It's not a very popular point because everybody wants to rush and solve his own or her own financial problem. Finally, we have to learn for the future and plan for future pandemics. Of course, we have to promote European cooperation. We don't have a European health policy, unfortunately, but we can take advantage of opportunities offered by next generation EU. And with countries like Greece that have a lot of problems, debt problems, for instance, they can ask money from the European Stability Mechanism. They can get a loan of up to 2% of GDP in order to deal with the consequences of COVID-19, especially in the health sector. This is another proposal that I make to the Greek government, but everybody is afraid of Klaus Regling, that he is going to impose some rules, and they want to avoid, let's say, getting that type of loan, subsidized loan with very low interest rate. But I think this is the way to proceed, to send the correct message that you get ready for the future as well. This is the situation we are faced with, but we are still hopeful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think this was a good, nearly a closing, but the most important thing, I think we can learn a lot out from Greece. Greece is a survivor and now knows how to manage crises. I think also that you give us the global perspective, that is, we have not only to be focused on this crisis, we have also to be focused that there is a competition with big neighbors. China in the global world, China is already a global neighbor, that we are in direct competition with them, that we have to see this. Also that you are brave enough to say that we have to be smart, but also careful, that we have really in this crisis not underestimate the coronavirus pandemic, and that we have not only to be popular, but responsible to our voters and people, and that perhaps a short relief can be a longer cost for us. And I think, but the key, what you say also, are this smart solution, blockchain, certification passport for vaccination. I think we have to answer this pandemic with answers of the 21st century, not of how we treat plagues in the medieval, and that we have to become much more smarter also for in the future, for I hope not, but soon, but it will be not the last pandemic, and we have to prepare for this. And now I would like to give the last word, the closing, to Ivan Štefanec, our president, that he says perhaps a short summarizing or a last word to this. And I want to say already from my side, thank you to the speakers, and inviting everybody of the stakeholders to get in contact with us, because we are planning a new recovery paper, how to manage this crisis and to come out and to manage the future as a champion. Please, Mr. Ivan Štefanec.
Thank you very much, Horst, and thank you everybody for really valuable contributions. I think it was very clear evidence that this survey made sense, and we will also spread the results of this survey not only at our Jobs conference, but also to our colleagues within the EPP group. I'd like to thank personally to my colleague Pernil Weiss, who initiated really the first survey and who was very, very active among Danish entrepreneurs. I'd like to thank also all my colleagues who contributed to this and also who encouraged entrepreneurs to participate. I think there were also from today's discussions a lot of clear arguments that we have to continue to push help for SMEs. The best way would be to really have free market, to break all the burdens and to have business as usual. We should not forget also that, as Paul Rubik said, that the best way how we help entrepreneurs is basically to free their hands, and we should not replace all the bureaucratic administrative decisions which now are managed now by European Union and also on the national level to be decisive. We should clearly highlight that what drives European Union, it is the power of entrepreneurship, and particularly the power of SMEs. That should be the clear message, not only also from this survey, also for the future. We will keep continuing our work for SMEs, and I do believe it is the best way how to help people to create new jobs, how to help European economy to survive, and we will find also the best way how to apply the conclusions from this useful survey in our daily work. Thank you, Horst, for also for very good moderation of today's discussion, and I'm looking forward to cooperation with everybody. Thank you indeed.